Well, g'day curd nerds. Today we're making Grana Padano style cheese. So yes, I said style cheese. It's not the real deal. It's not Grana Padano. It should be a fairly hard Italian cheese that is grainy, just like Grana Padano is, and its cousin Parmesan, or Parmigiano Reggiano. So it is not any of these two PDO cheeses, or protection designation of origin. So please don't flame me in the comments below. It's made with a semi-skimmed milk of about 2% fat, and you need to use a lot of it because the yield is quite low. Normally full cream cow's milk gives you a yield between 10 and 12%. I found that I got a yield that was significantly less, probably in the tune of about 5 to 6%. So out of the 14 litres of milk that I used, I got about 1.2 kilos. But you'll see that near the end of the video. Anyway, enough of me waffling. Let's get on and see how I made Grana Padano style cheese. I'm using Inglenook Dairy low-fat milk today. It's pasteurised and homogenised. The ingredients for this cheese are 14 litres or 14.8 quarts of low-fat cow's milk at 2% fat, 1/8 of a teaspoon of mesophilic culture, 1/8 of a teaspoon of thermophilic culture, 1/32 of a teaspoon of lipase diluted in 60 millilitres of cool non-chlorinated water, 1.25 millilitres or quarter of a teaspoon of calcium chloride diluted in 60 millilitres of cool non-chlorinated water, 2.5 millilitres or half a teaspoon of liquid rennet. I'm using single strength, diluted in 60 millilitres of cool non-chlorinated water, and you'll need a saturated brine solution at 18%. Now, I used 3 litres of 5% milk and 11 litres of 1.3% milk. Now, heat your milk up to 34 degrees Celsius, 93 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can see I've reached the temperature there already. Now just remove your utensils before you move on to the next step. I'm adding in the mesophilic starter culture, 1/8 of a teaspoon, just pouring that over the top of the milk. Then we add in the thermophilic starter culture. I'm just pouring that over the milk as well. So make sure that you cover the pot, and we're going to allow that to rehydrate for 5 minutes. Okay, the cultures are rehydrated, so we're going to mix those thoroughly through the milk. Just give it a good stir. Just gently mix those cultures that are floating on top into the milk, and then mix it in a top to bottom manner, as you can see there, sped up of course. So I'm stirring for about a minute. Now I'm going to add the lipase solution, which has been diluted or dissolved in 60 millilitres or quarter of a cup of water, and just give that a gentle stir through. Now we add it at this stage well before we add the rennet. So allow the milk to acidify now for 45 minutes. So 45 minutes later. Now you'll notice a bit of cream has risen to the top there. Just going to stir that back in. I did use some cold pressed raw milk in this. That's the 3 litres of whole milk that I used. Okay, just check the temperature. Yep, we're about right, nearly 34 Celsius, that's fine. So we're going to add the next two ingredients. So add the calcium chloride solution to your milk and give that a good stir. Then add in your rennet solution. And stir for no more than 1 minute. Okay, cover the milk again, stop any fluff or dust getting on your milk. And we're going to allow that to set now for 45 minutes at the target temperature of 34 Celsius, 93 degrees Fahrenheit. So hopefully your milk has set. I'm going to check it with a clean break, and that's simply putting a knife in and twisting it. And if the milk looks like it splits without any sloppiness, it's all ready to go. If it's not set, then wait another 15 minutes and it should be okay. So we're going to cut the curds now very small. So I'm trying to get as small as I can there, 1/2 centimetre or 1/4 inch columns. I'm not making cubes, I'm making columns. So I'm only doing the vertical cut for this cheese at the moment. So I've gone one way and then perpendicular go the other way to make the columns. There we go, columns all cut. Now I'm going to use a balloon whisk, just checking to see if it reached the bottom of the pot. It's always a good start. And we just plunge that and cut the curds smaller. So we're trying to halve the size of the curds that you originally cut with the knife. Probably down to about, well, baked bean size, I think. So now we're going to gently stir the curds whilst heating them up to 56 degrees Celsius or 133 Fahrenheit over the course of an hour. So about 5 minutes in, the whey was a little bit close to the top for me, so I just scooped out about a cup's worth, maybe 2, and just got rid of that. Just made it easier to stir for the hour. There we go. So now I can stir with my whisk. Now if there are any big bits, just cut them with the whisk wires. And I'm just stirring for the whole hour, just using the whisk. And you'll see that 1 hour later that the curd size is about the size of a plump rice grain. That's the size you're looking for. Now, this is the same with any hard Alpine or hard Italian style cheese. Very small curd size and cooked to a very high temperature. So we're going to remove the heat, so I'll just turn that off. I'm going to allow the curds to settle down to the bottom for 1 hour. This also helps them acidify even further. So 1 hour later, take it over to the sink area and we're going to drain the curds through a basket. I've got that lined in a cheesecloth lined colander, and just pour the curds into the basket. There's no draining time. I'm just getting that ready to take over to the sink area. Pop the follower on top. Now we're going to press the cheese. So the initial pressing is not as heavy as you would think. I've done about halfway down the spring. It's about 10 kilograms or 22 pounds. I'm going to do that for, just had to retighten the spring there, for 30 minutes. So 30 minutes later, just take it out of the basket.
out of the press. Take the follower off and just be gentle because it hasn't formed properly yet. As you can see there are some loose bits on the top. Maybe I should have pressed it for about an hour instead of 30 minutes, but it all works out in the end. The curds are fairly dry as they are for this style of cheese. So just pulling that gently off of the cheesecloth so I don't tear the rind at the bottom. Now I did spray the cheesecloth with vinegar before I put the curds into it. So for the second pressing, I'm going to press at 22 kilograms or 50 pounds for 24 hours. And I had to come back and retighten the spring probably about every 3 hours for this one. So 24 hours later, I'm going to remove the cheese from the press and the mould. And you'll see that the rind is all closed up and everything looks good. There we go, beautiful. Very firm, it's a very firm cheese. So there's a close-up of what it looks like after it's come out of the basket after the 24 hours of pressing. So we brine this cheese, so we're going to place it into an 18% brine solution for 18 hours, and we're going to turn it over at the 9-hour mark. Now I wasn't sure if it was going to be completely submerged, so I sprinkled some salt on top and then popped it into the brine container. You can use any plastic container, doesn't have to be fancy like this one. So once you've taken it out of the brine, air dry it for 2 to 3 days or until touch dry. It took about 2 days for mine to get dry. However, it dried out a fair bit. As you can see there are some cracks in the surface of the cheese. Now, if I had left this to naturally produce a rind, I would get mould in those cracks. So we're going to ripen that at 10 degrees Celsius for no less than 6 to 9 months. Total yield was 1.278 kilograms. And what I did after that was I vacuum packed it straight away so no mould will get into the cracks. So during maturation, turn the cheese weekly. That helps even ripening. Now Grana Padano can be aged for up to 2 years for a strong flavour. Now back to Gav.
Well, there you have it. It's a fairly simple cheese to make. A lot of stirring. You just have to make sure that you cut the curds very small down to rice grain size curd, and they shrink as you stir for that 1 hour period and the resting period as well. You may have noticed that near the end it started to dry out a little bit too quickly, so I quickly vacuum packed this cheese. The surface was very dry, the curds will be very dry, but that's the style that Grana Padano is. It's a very grainy, dry cheese. I don't think it will have to mature for the full 9 months, seeing it's a very small cheese. The flavour should be there within 6 months. I might try a small sample and then vacuum pack the rest for 9 to 12 months. Anyway, time will tell, and we will see that in the taste test in a few months, well, in about half a year's time. You can get the kit to make this cheese over at littlegreenworkshops.com.au, and the kit specifically is the Italian cheese kit. Well, thanks for watching, Curd Nerds, and I'll see you next time.